The theme of sacrifice has been shown time and time again to be one of the most important acts to take place within Naruto. It demonstrates more than just a death occurring for shock value, but instead a moment that displays how far an individual is willing to go to make sure the next generation gets the chance to grab hold of that will of fire they've been carrying close to their heart throughout the entire journey. And this might sound strange since sacrifice involves death, but it's actually something really beautiful that can transform these initial emotions of sadness into something a lot more positive. Hope, devotion, faith, and most importantly, love. There's many moments within Naruto that captures this entire premise perfectly, but for me, there was only one scenario that accomplished this in such a short amount of time with characters who weren't even alive in the current timeline the story follows, and captivating us from start to end of the cruel yet beautiful cycle of life and death. In this video, I'm going to be going over my all-time favorite flashback in the entirety of the series revolving around the birth of Naruto, explaining just how perfect of a sequence of events it is to watch unfold that gave this backstory that was once shrouded in mystery the proper care it deserved once it was time to shed some light onto it. And I wouldn't expect anything less from the quality that was presented to us, considering how incredibly important this backstory is when it came to filling in missing pieces from a puzzle that has always loomed in the background for, up to this point, 500 chapters, stemming all the way back to the very first chapter that started this journey we've all become a part of. It's incredible that considering how short of a backstory it is, Kishimoto manages to hit every single checkbox when it comes to delivering an impactful emotional experience from start to end, not overstaying its welcome or being too short to fully appreciate. So with that being said, let's dive in and take a look at what I consider to be the most important sacrifice in Naruto. The reason why I say it's incredible how Kishimoto handled this backstory in such a short amount of time is because I'm not just talking about the length of the actual backstory itself, but more importantly, the characters that take center stage. This of course being Minato and Kushina. These two haven't exactly appeared as frequently in the story compared to other side characters, and well, that makes sense since they've already long passed away in the timeline we're following. But even with the short glimpses to the past that properly introduced us to their present, there wasn't really a whole lot for us to work with when it came to forming a connection. While Minato does have a decently sized role in the Kakashi Gaiden arc, it's clear Kishimoto wanted the main focus to be on Kakashi and Obito, no matter how cool of a character Minato was being shown off as. There's a reason why we don't follow Minato in his section of the Third Great Ninja War when he separates himself from the team. Kishimoto making sure to not show him fighting his own battle, otherwise he would end up stealing the show due to already having that hype of us as the audience knowing he's going to be the future Fourth Hokage, and as well at this time being speculated as the main character's father. This arc simply wasn't meant to be his spotlight moment, even if he is just really damn cool and interesting to follow whenever he's on the page. And for Kushina, there's really nothing for us to work with besides the small flashback of the reveal of how Naruto got his name. So honestly, from a writing perspective, this felt like a challenging task for Kishimoto to handle when it came to eventually unraveling the story of Naruto's birth. Not only did he have to make sure the events that were being unraveled were building upon crucial story elements that would affect how we saw the past and future of the series, but as well as making sure the reader was getting attached as humanly possible to these two characters, given the amount of heart-wrenching events they would end up going through. And the way Kishimoto opens up this door of opportunity is absolutely perfect through Kushina. What initiates this story to begin with is when Naruto's in the midst of tackling the biggest source of hatred within him, this of course being the nine-tailed fox. But as many say, there's nothing on earth that's more powerful than a mother's love towards their own child. Kushina's appearance stopping that hatred in its tracks from consuming Naruto. And not only does her love put it to a halt, but due to that sense of peace one feels when feeling that warm embrace of love, it counters that hatred completely to give Naruto the upper hand in the battle. That support emotionally as well as physically through Kushina's chains helped Naruto achieve that next step in growth to gaining more strength. And if that isn't a really spectacular entrance to show how important of a character you are by assisting the main character in such a monumental challenge, then I don't know what is. It's made fairly clear that this entire encounter is centered around love. The anime taking advantage of the warm atmosphere that's been created with some really great character animation from Naruto not being able to sit still while listening to his mother speak, as that feeling of warmth and joy has awakened his inner kid-like self. This is a part of his life Naruto missed out on by growing up as an orphan and being feared by all. So getting to experience a moment moment where you're not only talking to someone who loves you, but as well as literally that mother figure you always craved, you could only imagine the crazy amount of joyful emotions flowing through Naruto. Enough to make him forget all about those past 15 to 16 years of suffering he's been through in the blink of an eye, which got demonstrated only a few moments ago. Kushina is a very underappreciated character, and I think this stems from the series having a not so positive reputation when it comes to its female cast. While I don't like the idea of separating genders and believe the cast should be judged altogether regardless of what gender they are, for the case of Naruto, it is hard to ignore how underutilized some of the female cast is, with only a few exceptions compared to the males. But I truly believe Kushina is one of those shining bright exceptions. Rather than her just being a character that's in the shadow of Minato, Kishimoto brings forth a lot more depth to her character to make her feel like her own person, and he does this by having her embody everything Naruto needs to be. While if we look at Minato, yes, Naruto does want to become Hokage just like his father. That was always a goal Naruto wanted long before he even knew the Fourth Hokage was his father. What he didn't know till now, however, was that his mother was also a Jinchuriki. But instead of becoming depressed about the situation, she instead didn't let it take away her happiness. This has always been something Naruto struggled with when it came to being the vessel for the Nine Tails, from being a complete outcast to having an organization hunting you down, and as well as being a danger to those around you. It's all seen as quite a lot to try and stay positive about. It feels like Kishimoto created Naruto's parents to each represent something special individually that Naruto needs to achieve. Kushina is the type of person Naruto needs to grow into mentally, all while Minato is who he needs to be physically. And so, what better way to showcase these attributes by going back to the past to see the events that transpired on the day of Naruto's birth. The date of October 10th was a day that not only brought the boy Naruto Uzumaki into the eyes of many, but as well as fear and tragedy. And this layer of fear and concern is not only on clear display later when the village is under attack, but leading up to the birth of Naruto is where we see this uneasy atmosphere slowly creep in more and more. For starters, the Nine-Tails seal is at its most vulnerable with childbirth, and on top of that, the location of Kushina's childbirth is positioned in a secret location that only a select few know of. And while all of this is of course necessary for these circumstances, the way all of this information slowly develops more and more prepares us, the audience, for the concerning atmosphere that has been built. As if childbirth wasn't already nerve-wracking enough, having these factors added onto it really does guide us more into the shoes of these characters for the range of anxious emotions they must be feeling. However, little did they know just how much this tension was going to be raised through the roof in a matter of seconds. What should be considered one of the best moments of their lives quickly transforms into absolute hell, as this is especially the case for Kushina. Not only had she gone through hours of childbirth while a literal demon was trying to use the opportunity to break free, but as soon as this new life had entered the world, it already ran the risk of ending straight away by an unknown masked man. I'm assuming all of you who are watching this video knows who this person is, but in case you don't, please do not continue this video till you get to that reveal. But anyway, leading to my point, knowing who this character is later down the road, in addition to reading his sentence about killing a baby within its first minute, is one of the most cold-hearted statements to ever leave a man's lips within this manga. And this clearly isn't a bluff, as he attempts to not only stab Naruto, but as well as blow him up with paper bombs. Again, it's just really chilling, especially with us all knowing now who this character under the mask is and the relationship he has, or I guess had, with these characters. Later on, Kushina continues to go through more pain and suffering as the Nine-Tails gets extracted. Her body that was only a moment ago bringing new life into this world was now delivering death and fear to the village. And the visuals that are presented here really do hammer in how much of a horror show these sequence of events have devolved into, both through the manga and anime. The manga delivers some really spectacular artwork capturing this atmosphere, especially with the Nine-Tails, such as this shot of Kurama taking up the entire page in this double page spread, showing how almighty of a blood-hungry beast he is, completely covering that dark night sky, as it's like he's now taking the role of the darkness that will roam this land. I also love how Kurama's face is blocking out the light from the moon, his head being the most shaded part compared to everywhere else on his body, as it really captures that demonic nature of how no light whatsoever can pierce this creature of raw darkness and hatred. That light is no longer something that people can look towards to help guide them to safety. There's a very neat touch Kishimoto gave to the Nine-Tails during this section too, and that's by Kurama having no pupils in his eyes for certain panels, most noteworthy being the scenes where fear is being delivered delivered. And I say this is a neat touch because the pupils are normally one of the core parts of the body we look towards to see emotions. So the act of removing them from a character can, in a way, sever that emotional connection. And while this may seem like a negative aspect, it's actually a really big positive. We're not supposed to feel any connection to the Ninetales at this current moment. This flashback displays him as a beast of pure hatred, raining down destruction on whoever he comes across, taking the lives of hundreds, if not thousands of innocent people. It's shocking and dreadful. This is the moment where Naruto's life changed forever. The boy we sympathized for at the very start, who cried when he found out there was actually one person in this cruel world who didn't view him as this demon. It's a very smart way for Kishimoto to put us into the right headspace he wants us to be in for this backstory in order to make the Ninetales look as cold-hearted as possible. Meanwhile, the anime also captures the intensity of the situation that's at play, mainly through the change in art style the second the Ninetales begins to destroy the Hidden Leaf Village, being approached with much more bolder, thicker lines that come across as very expressive, which matches the sheer amount of chaotic energy that's been displayed. It feels a lot more inky and blobby like traditional Japanese ink paintings, and in some ways this style creates a storybook feel to it, which I guess makes sense since this is where the story began, dating back to the very first episode and chapter of the series. This is also a story of events that was shared throughout the Leaf Village between countless people for many years, which could also tie this idea together. I love how the buildings aren't all highly detailed, especially with the windows, considering it looks like it was designed with one brushstroke. It makes the structures feel simple and more so delicate, correlating with how easy it is for the Ninetales to break these buildings with no problem at all. But going back to the two central characters of this story, Minato is often seen as the highlight within the community for the role he plays during this section, and that's fairly understandable considering what takes place later. But for me, it's always been Kushina. While this story is centered around filling in the unknown of what happened the day the Ninetales attacked, it honestly feels like Kushina's story more than anything. She is the one relaying all of this to Naruto after all, but even so, she's bound to be the one you end up feeling the most sympathetic for. Having the Ninetales be extracted from her means she's eventually going to die within the first night of her child being born, and that's just simply heartbreaking, not even including everything else that happens later on. And at this moment, our prayers for some type of hope and light to appear in this situation falls onto Minato. Kishimoto clearly building him up to be the one character who could potentially put a stop to this night of hell, but unfortunately for us, we all know how this story ends. The next section is where we really get to see what all of that built up hype for the Fourth Hokage is all about. Keep in mind that throughout the series, the Fourth Hokage has always been a fan favourite character, even with his very limited screen time during the Kakashi Gaiden arc and his reunion with Naruto during the Pain Assault arc. The character polls for the fans to vote on their favourite characters also clearly showed that interest too, as he always remained considerably high on the list, given at this point in the story, this being part 1 of Naruto, only his name was being tossed around and nothing more. What's interesting is that after the Kakashi Gaiden arc had finished and transitioned into Shippuden, the results for the fan favourite character poll had been announced, but it seems fairly clear voting had closed before fans had the chance to experience this arc, because in the very next poll after this, we see Minato explode all the way up into the top 10, this voting taking place during the Tenchi Bridge arc, this meaning that Minato hadn't appeared in the story again up to this point. So yeah, there was a lot of built up anticipation for this character that Kishimoto needed to deliver in a satisfying way, and boy does he accomplish that. From taking on the Ninetales head on and teleporting an entire Biju bomb to instantly switching the tables up on the masked individual who he believes to be Madara. Even with his wife on her deathbed, his child in danger of being killed, and the destruction of the village, he always kept a cool head and took control of the situation in a flash, fitting for his name. It takes an extreme amount of fortitude to continue moving forward with all of this on the mind, still pulling off an impressive show of feats that one can only admire. The battle with Obito here also lays out some interesting story elements that come into play later on, such as the foreshadowing of Obito's limbs being made from Setsu's body once we see his arm melting off from the attack, to then his flying Raijin marking being permanently placed on his body, a mark that never disappears, which allows Minato to teleport straight to Obito during the war. However, once the battle had ceased, this story eventually leads into its final curtain call. This section holds the most weight compared to everything up to now. Going back to a discussion I touched upon near the start of the video, we have two individuals who each have their own separate roles that Naruto needs to reach. However, what they both share is dying for what you believe in, and for this scenario, they believed in Naruto. Their hopes, wishes, and dreams all fall onto him, entrusting that will of fire onto the next generation, as like what Minato says, their family are shinobi, and that's what this life is all about. It's a heavy burden, but if the shinobi system has taught us anything, it's that one must endure for the world to remain stable. Having faith that the next generation will be able to accomplish things you didn't in your lifetime is something you want to believe in so much that you're willing to die for it. And this is shown through Minato's belief of having faith in Naruto, eventually being able to control the power of the Nine Tails. And as we all know later on in the series, that faith was well placed. Both of them believe in the future and will do anything they can to make it flourish, which is not only visibly displayed through their words but as well as actions, by using their own bodies to stop the final assault from the Nine Tails aimed towards Naruto. As previously stated, a parent's love is always considered one of the most strongest things out there, not only physically but as well as emotionally, which gets shown through the final words that leave Kushina's mouth. This final farewell from mother to son always breaks me down no matter how many times I rewatch or reread this exact scene. It's really a slow rise of emotions that will eventually rip your heart out, as this slow build up matches the ever-growing advice Kushina gives to Naruto one on top of the other. She's informing her son the most important things a parent teaches their child over the course of their growth into an adult, but instead of these topics being addressed throughout the years, it's all dished out in a matter of minutes. Not only is it heart-wrenching, but it's also just really depressing seeing a mother forced into such a position, as this rush of loving advice is clearly something she had prepared to teach Naruto herself, but that future simply no longer exists. We don't see Kushina and Minato for long, yet their stay was enough to really demonstrate how much love they had for their child, expressing it right up to the very end at the cost of their lives. And sure, Naruto was only a baby, so there was no possible way for him to understand the sacrifices his parents made for him, along with the speech of the type of shinobi they wanted him to grow into. However, while the physical act of protection wasn't wasted, neither was the final message Kushina gave to Naruto. She really wanted to keep close hold of that happiness she clinged onto at the start, all the way up to the very end, wishing to be that role model her child would inspire to be, where no matter the situation you're in, you can still be grateful for the things that have become a part of your life and made you who you are today. That's something Minato even thanked her for, and so who else left but to pass this on to her own child, which she accomplishes. After Naruto learns about the events of his birth, he replies with how happy he is that he's their child, learning from his mother about not needing to hold any resentment towards something that has been forced upon you in your life, as it's always something you can push through if you truly believe in yourself, especially if you have the love from someone to give you that strength to keep going, just like Kushina had with Minato and now what Naruto has with his parents. Moments like these can even be seen all the way back at the start of the 5 Kage Summit arc, when Naruto informs Kakashi that one of the most memorable and important things his father said to him was that he believed in him. Going back to this goodbye, however, this reunion with Kushina can sometimes be very underlooked in terms of how it really sets up the inevitable bond Naruto starts to form with Kurama, as this is the most noticeable time period in the series where the relationship grows a lot because of the lesson he learned from Kushina, as there's multiple instances where he says similar statements that his mother told him about how being with a Biju isn't necessarily a bad thing. The same goes with having a strength to push forward if you have a loved one by your side, Hinata being the exact person Naruto needed when it came to pushing on after Neji's death. Kushina's love for Naruto, even past death, was the exact concept Naruto needed to make him be fully at peace with the role he was born into. What makes it all so beautiful is how this part of the story is mainly influenced through personal events in Kishimoto's own life. This reunion between mother and son was a part of the story that Kishimoto didn't plan to even write about, but becoming a father changed all of that. And I think that's honestly great, as it just goes to show that you don't need to be afraid of letting your personal feelings influence your work, not allowing yourself to remain tightly shackled to a guideline of story beats you need to tick off like checkboxes for the narrative you're telling, but instead letting your own personal emotions flow into the work you love will be enough to showcase to others how truly beautiful of a touching story it is you want to share. The same applies to us as fans when it comes to how we feel about the manga we consume. Yeah, it's fine to be critical, but at the end of the day, a series such as Naruto are here for our own personal enjoyment, so just don't be afraid to let personal feelings demonstrate how truly passionate you are when it comes to the things you love. Express it and enjoy yourself, as people will see that passion, just like we have with Kishimoto's story of father, mother, and son. This is easily my favourite backstory in the entire Naruto series. It not only shined a light on events that were shrouded in mystery, but it also shifts focus to two characters who only appear for a short amount of time, yet still manage to captivate us even with that time restraint. And I do need to say that there is a difference between wasted and utilised, as I've seen the word wasted get tossed around quite a bit in regards to Minato and Kushina. And just because you want more of a character doesn't mean they've been wasted. If they were utilised correctly for the role they needed to fulfill, like these two were, then it means they didn't overstay their welcome and, as said, accomplished what was necessary. Yes, it's short, but it's also sweet, as this is one of the many key reasons why I love this story segment. It's incredibly strong from start to end and gets straight to the point of the unknown backstory everyone was eagerly anticipating. And after waiting 500 chapters to witness this moment in history unfold, diving headfirst into it definitely feels like the appropriate pathway to take, considering the amount of build-up we had all been sitting through. So, with that being said, if you liked anything I've talked about in regards to this discussion on what I consider to be the most important sacrifice in Naruto, then please give the video a like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you can get notified when I drop my next video. It's for free and it lets me know you're enjoying my content, so if you're at least a slight bit interested, you might as well stick along for the ride. As well, do follow me over on my Twitter account at MikeyUB. It's the place where I'm most active, so if you want to message me over there about anything you want, then feel free. And also, please do comment below if there's anything you'd like to talk about, whether it's to do with this backstory or anything anime and manga related in general. Whatever the discussion is, I'll make sure to check it out. And with this, thank you all so much for watching the video to the very end. Hope you all have a great day, and bless.